We've been working on all of these different quilt blocks, and I told y'all that I was going to make a sampler quilt out of mine. So let's put our quilt together. We have 12 blocks total that we've done so far. So I cut strips. Sorry, y'all. I cut strips that are 2.5 inches wide by 18 inches long because my piece of fabric is 18 inches and all of my quilt blocks are 18 by 18. So I need this. And then I cut a whole bunch of mismatched fabrics. I just used some that coordinated with my fabric, but you can make these all the same color or whatever it is you want to do. It's your quilt. And I cut these 2.5 by 2.5 inches. So the first thing I'm going to do is take one of my 2.5 by 18 inch strips, and I'm gonna lay my quilt block face up, pretty side up. I'm gonna lay my fabric pretty side down, just like this, on the top. Now, I'm only gonna sew the top and the right side, and I'll explain why in just a second. So I've laid this here, and I'm gonna straight stitch right here. Straight stitch, 1/4 inch seam, back stitching when you start and when you stop, because my grandma said so. Now, I've never had any luck sewing 3 quilt blocks together and 3 quilt blocks together and one solid strip in between them. I never have my quilt blocks even. I have some kind of offset situation, and I know it's my sewing, but I'm going to show you how I get mine so that the seams do line up. And this is how I teach my students. So we did one strip right here. Now we're going to take whatever color square we have. I'm just using the one that's on the top because it doesn't matter to me. And then I'm going to take a second strip just like this. I'm going to sew my 2.5 inch by 2.5 inch square to my 2.5 by 18 inch strip, just like this, pretty side to pretty side on one end, and I'm going to stitch right here. Straight stitch, 1/4 inch seam, back stitching when you start and when you stop, because my grandma said so. This is my ironing situation. Heat resistant pad, wool mat, sheet iron, all available at Walmart, all linked in my Walmart storefront that's linked in the caption if you're looking for it. I'm going to iron this, and then I'm going to iron this, the 2 things that I've sewn, and then we're going to sew these together. Now, I teach my students to only sew 2 sides. You only put a strip on the top and the right side, and it really doesn't have to be the top and the right side. It can be the bottom and the left, any 2 sides. And listen, there's a million ways to put this quilt together. You don't have to do it my way. If you have a way that you prefer that's easy for you, that's how I want you to do it. So now we have our strip on the top, and then we're going to put it on the right side. So do you see how it's going to look right here? I'm going to fold this over, lay it pretty side to pretty side, and I'm going to straight stitch from the top to the bottom. Okay, now this is what we have. So we have 12 blocks. So my sampler quilt is going to be 3, 3, 3, 3. So 3 blocks wide and 4 blocks long. I have this block, block number 2, and then this block, which is block number 3. These are going to be the bottom row of my sampler quilt. I've already sewn the top part of it together because y'all don't want to sit here for 6 hours while I sew. But I do want to show you how it goes together because it's so pretty. So I'm going to take my, let's see what we want this to look like. I'm going to take the first 2 blocks that I'm sewing together, and I'm going to lay them like I want them to look. And do you see how this block only has borders on 2 sides? This block only has borders on 2 sides. But when I put these 2 blocks together, the border on the right of this block makes the border on the left of this block. So it puts a border in between each square. So now we're going to place them pretty side to pretty side, and I'm going to sew this from the top to the bottom. Straight stitch, 1/4 inch seam, back stitching when you start and when you stop. Now, do you see that? So pretty. We have a 3rd block. We're going to sew it on here the same way. We're going to lay it down so that we have a strip in between it, and we're going to put it pretty side to pretty side, and we're going to sew right here. Straight stitch, 1/4 inch seam, back stitching when you start and when you stop. We're going to sew all of these exactly the same way. Okay, so now here is our bottom row. And as these rows come together, well, let me show you. Here are the top 3 rows of our quilt. You see how the bottom of this doesn't have a border, but when I put this one on here, it's going to make the bottom of that all the way across for this row. When you finish your entire quilt, you're going to need a complete bottom border on the bottom of your quilt, and you're going to need a border up the left side because you've only put borders on the right and the top and the right side. So after you get your entire quilt together, everything will have a border except for the bottom and the left side. So I have already sewn the border on the left side of the top part of our quilt. So I'm going to sew the border right here, and then I'm going to sew a border across the bottom. And I'm going to do that by doing the same thing we just did. I'm going to put a square and a strip. I'm going to sew this together, pretty side to pretty side, straight stitch, 1/4 inch seam, back stitching when you start and when you stop, and then I'm going to sew it to my quilt block. Now I'm going to sew the bottom row to the top part of my quilt. You see my border right here? I'm going to put it pretty side to pretty side, straight stitch, 1/4 inch seam. Listen, and I want you to pinch it, pleat it, pull it, whatever you got to do to get every seam to match, because nobody's noticing one little piece that you pinched, pleated, or pulled, but they are noticing when you get to the other end of the quilt and one block is that much longer than the other. Ask me how I know. So pinch it, pleat it, pull it, and if you don't want to, don't. But don't yell at me, okay? Make your seams match and sew this from one side all the way to the other. Okay, so now that's sewn, and what we have is the bottom of our quilt to do. Now when you're doing it at home, you'll have the left side to do also, but you'll do it the same way that we're about to do the bottom. So I'm going to sew strips and squares together enough to do the entire bottom. So I need 1, 2, 3, 4 squares and 4 strips. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 squares and 3 strips. I knew my math was not mathing. So I'm going to sew square, strip, square, strip, square, strip together until I have it long enough. I'm going to do 4 strips and 3 squares. So I'm going to do my pieces like this. I'm going to sew this together, and then I'm going to sew another square to the bottom of it, and then I'm going to sew another strip to the bottom of that, and a square and a strip and a square until I get what I need. And then we're going to sew it on the bottom of our quilt. And you can do this if you prefer this method. You could do it this way whenever you put your squares together. You could just sew your strip down one side, and then you could put your rows together like this with this in between it. It's totally up to you. There's a million ways to put this together, and I want you to do whatever is easiest for your brain to comprehend. So we're going to sew these the same way. Straight stitch, 1/4 inch seam, back stitching when we start and when we stop, because my grandma said so. Okay, we've sewn the bottom part of our quilt together. Now we're going to sew it on our quilt. And no, I'm not ironing before I sew it. Yes, I probably should, but I don't want to, so I'm not. If you want to, I want you to. We're going to line it up just like we sewed our row of blocks to our other quilt. We're going to make sure our seams match and sew it with a straight stitch, a 1/4 inch seam. We're going to get the straight stitch by not looking at our needle. We're going to follow our fabric and our presser foot. If you follow the edge of your fabric with the edge of your presser foot, that's going to give you a 1/4 inch seam. And if you don't look at your needle, it'll be nice and straight. I promise. Our sampler quilt ready to be quilted. Let's go look at it. My name is Tammy. I'm your favorite sewing teacher, and I would love for you to come sew with me.